Welcome to the Real Estate, a real estate podcast, number 3.
Welcome back.
And we've got Alison with us today and Kayla. We're back and better than ever. Wearing the same clothes as we did in the last podcast. Funny that.
I was just going to touch on that.
We filmed on the same day.
It's a bit suspicious.
So today we're going to be looking at the property management process from start to finish, really. So Alison is really at the beginning of this process, being in our investor services department. Yes. So taking on all the new business and then putting it through to getting a new tenant. And then Kayla and I are more involved on the other side with our property managers. So we help support the team and we'll kind of take you through the process of what it's like to have a tenant.
Yeah, so we're going to take you through the process from start to finish.
Yep.
It will be slightly different if there was, say, a tenant already in place and it's a relet, so it's a property that we already manage, opposed to one that we're bringing on, which is where I get involved. Yep. So initially when I'm meeting with the landlord at the property, I'll have a quick walkthrough, obviously, to do an appraisal and tell them a market update, so where I think their property is sitting in the market and what's a good price to advertise it at. Depending on the price that you choose, obviously, can really dictate how many applications you're going to receive and how many people are going to come to the home open.
Absolutely.
If you're marketing a property at the real top,
you're
obviously going to have less inquiries. So it just depends how long the landlord wants the property to take to lease. Even though we are in a really tight rental market, people still aren't willing to pay, exorbitant prices. There is a limit on it, and that's part of my process, educating them on what they can expect to receive.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really, really good. We have a bit of a diagram that we kind of use to show what price you should be advertising a property at and how big the pool gets of tenants.
Yeah.
With what price you're kind of advertising for.
It's really helpful to explain to landlords when you're meeting with them as well, because quite often they want to test the market and see maybe what they can achieve, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it just depends if it suits their plans and how quickly they're needing, to get tenants into the property and how long they can go with it being vacant.
Absolutely. So, okay, landlords, you've been to the property, you've done the appraisal, and the landlord's like, all right, Alison, I'm ready to go. I
love you and I want to sign up.
Yeah, I want to sign up. Davey looks great because we are. What happens next?
So after that, it will be a discussion whether they're still living at the property, if they want to have home opens while they're still there, or if they want to wait until it's vacated. But getting photos taken, professional photos, makes such a difference when you're advertising the property. It's really important, so that when we're putting the property on realestate.com, rewa.com, all the major websites, that listing looks good and it's going to attract, the higher quality tenants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so after advertising and starting to generate inquiries, what's the next step? Where do you go from there?
So next step is scheduling a home open. We usually wait a few days after the property's been online just so people have time to view it. We'll book in the home open. Once we've done the home open, it's really important for me to give that feedback to landlords as well, either what people are saying when they're coming through the door or people that make application. The landlord's not getting to meet them, so you're their eyes and ears.
Yeah.
And giving them that feedback so that they can make a really informed decision is really important, and I think they really value it as well.
Yeah, and first impressions count. So when you are meeting
Definitely
the tenants,
do.
it makes a massive difference. And being able to express that back to the landlord, like, oh, these people were really lovely, like they came really well presented, they were, really interested, and they asked, lots of questions.
And tenants quite often as well, if there's any tenants that are listening, they quite often ask how can they sort of, be different from others, or how can they stand out.
We love a cover letter.
Yes,
we love a cover letter.
We do.
Yeah.
It's, the home opens in a way sort of an audition, like, as bad as it might sound.
You don't have to dance.
No, but you definitely, you want to make sure that you're well presented, and, when you're coming through the property, if you are interested, it's good to have a chat with the agent as well and just let them know that you will be putting in an application. That way they can keep an eye out for it as well, because sometimes even with systems, God forbid we don't, receive your application. If we're looking out for it, then that's maybe something that we can, follow up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just touching back on the cover letter, because people do ask us all the time, like, how can I put my best foot forward?
Yeah, how can I improve?
Yeah, and we get to meet you. We're at the property, we get to meet you, so, you might seem really great, but the owner doesn't, like you just said, Alison. Yeah. So being able to present a cover letter to the landlord, some people put their photos on it or a picture of their pet.
I love a photo.
Oh, we love photos. They're great.
You've got to think if you're the landlord and you're receiving an application, it's really hard to get a feel from, of someone from an application.
Yeah.
So a cover letter with a photo and just sort of explaining maybe if you're new to Perth or where you've been renting previously, what your situation is.
It makes it a lot more personable.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
like
it
a resume.
does.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It is really good. Yeah, really good. So I'm at a tenant, I'm at a home open, love the property. What's the next step for me?
putting in an application. So we'll straight away after a home open send you a SMS link and an email link as well, so you can fill in the application online. We use Inspect Real Estate, which I think is pretty straightforward for people to use, and upload their supporting documents. So I always encourage people after the home open to put it in that evening, or if it's on a weekend, put it in over the weekend, because we will look at it the next business day. It's not first in best dress, but if we have 10 applications and yours doesn't come in until 24 hours later, we're already a day into processing those applications. So you are behind the eight ball. Yeah, and filling in your application correctly and fully is really important, because if we're then chasing you, that delays the process as well. So
just make sure you provide all your information.
Absolutely. The quicker we can get that application through to the owner, the higher your chances are of potentially being successful for that property. Yeah. And just back onto advertising, Alison, so with Inspect Real Estate and another program we use, we've got actually a pool of tenants that we kind of have sitting there that have inquired on similar properties. So your property comes online, and then we actually push out an email to all of those prospective tenants saying, you've inquired on other properties that are similar to this one might interest you too. So you might have people ready to go before even. Yeah, and that's quite often what happens. We'll put a property live, and if it's in a great location that presents really well, we'll send out the early bird listing, and that can reach hundreds of prospective tenants. So within 5 minutes, we might have 10 or 15 people registered for a home open. So if you've been to a home open either in the similar area or price range, you'll get noted in the system, so you'll be notified of any other ones that pop up. Yeah, all right. And then applications are now being processed. So how long does that usually take?
Between 24 and 48 hours is our policy at Davey. We try and get them to the owner as quickly as possible. Obviously, there can be some expected delays depending on processing applications and, of course, owner response time. So we do generally try and get a response from an owner within 24 hours to 48 hours, 24 to 48, but sometimes it can't be guaranteed.
Yeah.
So
and references as well.
Absolutely.
If they're not getting back to us, that can delay it a little bit, but our goal is 24 to 48 hours. Yeah. And then from there, what happens with the application? So after the application gets submitted to the owner, we'll have a conversation with them and just say, look, here are all the applications in front of you. Do you have any questions? And just get a feel for which one they're wanting to go ahead with. Once they do select a tenant, we'll then give them a phone call and just say, congratulations, the owner's accepted you. Are you happy to go ahead? And we'll work through the finer details before sending off an approval. Yep, perfect.
Yeah, so once you've chosen an application, the process then gets passed on to the property manager, who you would have been introduced to during the advertising part of the process, and you would have received a very lovely link to their bio, which has all their qualifications and a lot of information about your property manager. And from there, they will do the sign up with your tenant and go through all of the things and obligations and expectations we have of them, all the particulars of their lease and everything like that. And then they'll give you a call after that to let you know that your tenant is all signed up and ready to move into their lovely new home. And they will be managing the process from here on out.
Yeah, so they look after the property ongoing. Ongoing management includes rent collection, routine inspections for a year that we're allowed to do. They handle all repairs and maintenance, and all tenant inquiries. So the tenants, they email often. Each property manager looks after, quite a few properties. It's not like they're just looking after the one. Some manage up to 200. So they're dealing with many different tenants, many different landlords, and they're basically the meat in the sandwich. So they're communicating between both parties.
The middle person.
And they're managing the whole process with whatever comes up during the tenancy. But I think it's also important to note, especially at Davey, we have a lot of support in the background. So while you might have a main point of contact that you deal with on the daily or weekly basis, or however often you're speaking to them, there's a herd behind them, a herd of people. The tribe, the Davey tribe. So Alison's still really involved. She comes to all of our property management meetings, so she's seeing your property and how it's being run throughout the entire tenancy. You've got Kayla, our team leader, so she looks after the team and makes sure everything's ticking along nicely. I oversee the team as well, so there's heaps of people that are looking after your property in the background. You just might not talk to them every day. But yeah, so it's good to know, because you're not just being looked after one person.
Or a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, well-oiled machine. We've got lots of processes to make sure everything's being done in a timely manner. We do tenancy reviews, so rent reviews, now that they're 12 months, it will slow down a little bit. They used to be 6, so that was quite an important part of the role, but that will usually probably now fall in line with the lease renewal. So When the tenancy comes up for renewal, the property manager will handle that at that point. So if the tenant decides not to renew the lease and they go to relet the property, Alison won't be involved at that point. It'll be a property manager that does the relet. Yeah. And then the vacating process. So when a tenant vacates. So that's a big one. It is. A lot of people think that the beginning is a lot of work, but I think probably the vacating process when a tenant decides to move out is probably the biggest part of the job.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, in property management particularly.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the property manager goes out to the property once the tenant has handed keys back, and they go refer to the property condition report. And they make sure everything matches, and if it doesn't, then that's something that the tenant needs to rectify, minus fair wear and tear, of course. But that can be a lengthy process.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight.
It takes hours.
Yeah.
So
hours
physically at the property, you're out there for a minimum of 3.5 to 4 hours, depending on the size of the property.
Yeah.
And then you have to come back to the office and finalise that report. So obviously you've taken the report out with you and you're comparing all of the discrepancies and what's the same and what's not, and fair wear and tear. And then you have to come back to the office and compare photos and everything like that. So it's actually a very lengthy process and part of the role. And then so once that report is finalised, your property manager will send you an email with both reports, so the original property condition report and the final with the photos, and they will outline any discrepancies that have come up and any fair wear and tear and any maintenance that you need to attend to as a landlord. And once you have received that list and you're happy for it, if there's any discrepancies that need to go to the tenant, we will advise the tenant and then also manage that process, because that can also be a process that requires a lot of proactive communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And then whilst all that's going on, you're advertising the property for rent again.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that. I was like, quite often the final inspection can carry on for maybe a couple of weeks after the tenant vacates. Meanwhile, a new tenancy started.
I know.
So it's all go again.
It's go. And we try to leave about a week between tenancies if we can, because, it's not on us, it's the availability of contractors if we need to get cleaners out to the property, and any delays, like the tenant might not be able to, something might happen, they might move out a day late, and it can cause massive delays throughout the whole process. So there's a lot going on, particularly at that point, and then we'll find you a new tenant to move into the property, and then the process starts again.
All the fun.
Well, that's it. I think that's a quick guide into the property management process. Obviously there's a lot involved.
Yes.
Being a property manager, it's a very busy job.
No one day is the same.
No,
that's the easiest way to put it.
Many hats are worn.
We're all doing different things, but getting the job done at the end of the day.
And learning along the way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because things come up that we've not dealt with, and maybe someone in the team has or hasn't.
Yeah, and that's what's really important. I think we lean on each other quite a lot, which is great. And like I think you touched on, we do fortnightly catch-ups, which, we also do a bit of training at the same time, but we just share experiences and learn from that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.